So what I'm going to get into today with you is the fact that the higher education sector has effectively cried wolf for many years about revenues and expenses and the concerns there. Oftentimes with myths that have persisted that may or may not be totally accurate. As a result, now that the status quo has come to a place where it's broken, the world is not really listening, nor is it helping. And that means the higher education institutions really need to help themselves grow and change if you're going to address what's happening in the market. And we have some recommendations on how to start to get there through taking a hard look at expense and revenue, or what we call that dirty word in the education market, profitability. And then we can take some of your questions at the end. So this slide is titled Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics, or the Boy Who Cried Wolf. And, you know, first of all, I start out with a silly comic that talks about, you know, the quote Benjamin Disraeli said there are these three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. And, you know, the comic goes on to say that 9 out of 10 people say that was Mark Twain, who thought he was quoting Benjamin Disraeli. But the point here is that statistics persist and oftentimes are inaccurate. And in this era of, you know, fake news, sometimes those statistics really take a life of their own where they really don't make sense. And this is why we're talking about the boy who cried wolf today in relation to the higher education market. Just to refresh your memory, in case you're not familiar with the fable, there's a little boy in a shepherding village. Again, Aesop was a Greek slave who had a collection of fables way back in the day, so hence the shepherding reference. But the boy's out with his sheep in the pasture, bored out of his mind, devises a game to keep himself excited. Obviously, there's a big threat if there's a predator who comes to eat the sheep. So he yells about a wolf coming to eat the sheep, and the villagers come running, and he giggles and giggles and thinks it's like the funniest thing in the world to get people to show up when they really don't need to be there. And higher education is very much the same way. And I'm going to talk through some myths that have persisted that really truly have caused people to be very skeptical of the market and where it is. So the first thing is that institutions can't afford to keep raising prices, that you know, there isn't this college price inflation. That's just completely inaccurate. So this lovely chart comes from an analysis that CNBC did of the higher education market and costs from 1971 to 2015 based on a series of publicly available data. And basically what that chart shows, which is a little bit of an eye chart, is the consumer price index for things like apparel, transportation, food, beverages, housing, medical care, et cetera, versus the rising costs of various for-profit, not-for-profit, and varying years of higher education institutions. And what you can see there is that the sticker price of American college has increased nearly 400% in the last 30 years. Median household income growth was relatively flat. You know, it's been raising way above the rate of inflation, according to folks who've really studied this. And the only thing that's gone crazy beyond it is medical care. So people are pretty frustrated. The cost of education is just spiraling out of control. The second thing is that, and again, this is always a dirty word, and I'll take a step back here, you know, institutions generally are not-for-profit in this sector, and generally they're mission-driven, which means that many of us are at institutions where the vision and mission for the institution are something like spread light and truth, educate the world, generate the next group of leaders. These glowing, beautiful things which don't tie back to revenue and expense the way a for-profit enterprise might be, where, you know, at the end of the day, you're creating shareholder or stakeholder value.